The chandeliers sparkled above polished marble floors, and laughter filled the Beverly Hills estate like static. Waiters floated around with trays of golden champagne. Dresses shimmered. Conversations buzzed with money and politics. But the energy shifted the moment a single figure appeared at the top of the grand staircase. Ava stood tall in a deep sapphire gown that hugged her like it had been stitched onto her skin. Her natural curls were swept into a clean bun. A single diamond earring glinted as she began her descent, slow, graceful, and terrifyingly calm. Someone gasped. Another guest elbowed their friend. Then came the laughter, loud, sharp, and poisonous. "Oh, look, the help has arrived," muttered one woman, not even hiding it. Charles Whitmore, standing near the bar in a white tuxedo and black bow tie, lifted his crystal glass. His voice rang through the hall like a bad joke. "Our loyal maid made it, ladies and gentlemen. Let's give her the welcome she deserves." Laughter exploded. Phones came out. Guests whispered with wicked delight. Some took pictures. Others whispered bets on how long she'd last. Ava didn't flinch. She kept walking, one step at a time, as if she'd done this 100 times before. Every eye was on her, waiting for her to crack, to fold, to run. But instead, she looked Charles dead in the eye and gave the smallest, coldest smile. No apology. No fear. Half the room went quiet, without even realizing it. A senator's wife leaned to her husband. Who is she really? Nobody had the answer. Not yet. But tonight, they were about to find out. And some of them wouldn't sleep the same again. 3 years ago, Ava had entered this mansion through the back door, mop in hand, name tag on chest, and silence on her lips. She wasn't hired for her voice, just her ability to disappear between rooms. They never remembered her name, just called her the Maid or you. She cleaned those marble floors with her knees while they walked across them without looking down. She emptied their ashtrays, picked up their shattered glass, heard them fight, lie, and cheat, all while pretending she was invisible. One day she found a lipstick-stained napkin in the master suite that wasn't Mrs. Whitmore's shade. She never spoke a word. Another time she overheard Charles bragging about a dirty deal during a late-night poker game. Again, silence. That was Ava's world. Keep your head down, keep your job, and survive. Until one morning, she came into work and found a gold-trimmed envelope on the kitchen counter. It smelled like perfume and power. Inside was a single card. You are formally invited to the Whitmore Winter Gala. Dress code, maximum elegance. She stared at it, not with excitement, but with caution. The corner of the card had a smudge, the same kind of smirk Charles wore when he handed her Christmas bonuses in envelopes with nothing inside. It wasn't kindness. It was bait. A setup. She knew it the moment she touched the envelope. And yet, she kept it. Not because she believed she belonged there, but because she knew something they didn't. She wasn't the same girl they thought she was. She never was. And soon, they'd realize just how big of a mistake they made. The night before the gala, Charles Whitmore stood in his study sipping aged whiskey, laughing with his wife Helena. The fire cracked behind him, but his eyes burned colder. 50 grand, he smirked, tossing his cufflinks into a velvet box. That's my bet. She won't even show. Helena leaned back on the leather couch, swirling her glass. And if she does? She'll be the joke of the evening. A walking punchline in borrowed heels. Helena chuckled. You're awful. No, Charles replied. I'm educational. I'm reminding the help to stay in their place. They'd invited photographers from Vanity Scene and a few tabloid bloggers, not to cover the gala, but to capture the exact moment Ava realized she didn't belong. They even hired a string quartet to play louder when she walked in, just to drown out her footsteps. It wasn't a party. It was a trap dressed in velvet and candlelight. Earlier that day, Charles had even dropped the invitation on the counter himself. "You got something elegant in that wardrobe of yours, don't you?" he said with that same smirk. "Maybe one of those gowns from the laundry room?" He didn't laugh. He didn't need to. His friends did it for him. Helena had whispered behind his back, "She'll show up in some thrift store mess and cry before dessert." But there were two things Charles didn't know. One, Ava had once lived in homes 10 times bigger than his. And two, she wasn't coming to their party. She was coming for something else. Something that would rip the gold off those walls and leave truth hanging naked in front of every guest. By the time Ava stepped through the entrance of the Whitmore mansion that night, the party was in full swing. Champagne flutes clinked. Laughter bounced between crystal chandeliers. And then, silence. Heels tapped softly against the marble as Ava entered, wearing a midnight blue gown that shimmered like stormlight under the chandeliers. Her skin glowed. Her posture was royal. And her presence? It hit the room like a wave. People turned. Some squinted, unsure. Others gawked. A few gasped, not because they recognized her, but because they didn't. "Wait, is that her?" whispered a man in a velvet blazer. "No way! That can't be the maid," said a woman holding her glass mid-air. But it was. Ava walked with the kind of grace you don't rent, the kind that's inherited. Charles saw her from across the ballroom and blinked twice. She smiled gently, not to greet him, but to warn him. He raised a glass and chuckled. "You look confident." "I feel exactly where I belong," she said, eyes steady, voice calm. Charles's smirk twitched. A senator's wife whispered to her friend, "Where did she get that dress?" "I bet she rented it, probably paying in monthly installments," someone else sneered, laughing nervously. But Ava didn't hear them. Or maybe she did, and just didn't care. She moved through the ballroom like a current, steady, quiet, impossible to ignore. People stepped back, unsure whether to laugh or respect her. And then Charles moved closer, glass still in hand. "Didn't expect to see you tonight," he said. "You should get used to being wrong," Ava replied. The pianist missed a note. Helena nearly choked on her drink. And for the first time, Charles didn't have anything clever to say. Patricia Weston stepped forward first. A senator's wife known more for her gossip than grace. She gave Ava a tight-lipped smile that barely disguised her venom. "Well, Ava, I must say, that's quite the dress. How long did it take to find something decent? Must have been a challenge for someone like you." Ava tilted her head slightly, eyes calm. "This dress has history," she said. "It belonged to my mother." The room chuckled. Cruel, dismissive laughter, like rich people choking on their own arrogance. "And where did your mother wear something like that?" Patricia smirked. "A church banquet?" Ava smiled back, slow and sharp. "She wore it right here, 20 years ago, in this same ballroom, when she was still Isabella Whitmore." The laughter died. Instantly. Even the violinist stopped playing. "What did she say?" someone whispered. Charles, who had been sipping his drink with smug satisfaction, turned like a statue creaking into motion. Ava's voice didn't waver. "I didn't just show up for your little gala, Charles. I came home." Helena's grip on her glass tightened. "She's bluffing," she whispered, eyes darting to her husband. "I'm not," Ava said. She reached into her small clutch and pulled out a velvet box. Inside sat a family ring, gold band, blue sapphire center, the Whitmore crest engraved deep into its base. "This ring was given to my mother by Henry Whitmore, your father, my grandfather." Charles's face lost all color. His lips moved, but no sound came. "That's not possible," someone muttered. Ava took a step forward. "He promised to take care of us. He kept his word until he died." Patricia's face was blank now. "Wait, are you saying—" "I'm not Charles's cousin," Ava said, locking eyes with the man who tried to destroy her. "I'm his half-sister." The gasp that followed wasn't theatrical. It was real, painful, public. Charles stepped back like he'd been slapped. "You're lying." "You wish I was." The silence in the ballroom was suffocating. Guests looked at each other, unsure whether to run, stay, or pretend they weren't witnessing history burn right in front of them. Charles tried to laugh it off. "This is ridiculous. You're just a bitter employee, spinning a fairy tale." Ava didn't flinch. She raised her hand. From the front door, 3 people stepped in. The first, Diane Monroe, one of L.A.'s most feared investigative journalists. The second, Marcus Bennett, a high-powered attorney who specialized in family estates and financial fraud. And the third made Charles stumble back like he'd seen a ghost. "Dr. Harold Evans," Helena whispered, clutching her husband's arm. "Your father's private physician." Dr. Evans walked to the center of the room, shaking slightly but speaking firmly. 20 years ago, I signed Henry Whitmore's death certificate under pressure. But I've lived with guilt ever since. He didn't die of heart failure. He was slowly poisoned." Gasps erupted. A woman dropped her champagne glass. "This is a stunt," Charles barked. "You're all lying." Diane stepped forward, holding a tablet. "Actually, Charles, I have voice recordings. You threatening Dr. Evans. You calling Ava's mother a stain. You telling your accountant to hide missing millions." Marcus opened his briefcase and pulled out legal papers. "This," he said, "is the original will Henry Whitmore tried to file before his death. It names Ava as a beneficiary, equal heir to the estate." "You can't be serious," Charles screamed. "You cut off our allowance," Ava said coldly. "You sold the house our grandfather bought us. You buried us in silence." Dr. Evans added, "Henry discovered Charles was embezzling from the family company. He changed the will. Days later, he started showing signs of arsenic poisoning." Charles looked around, searching for support. There was none. A guest whispered, "He killed his own father." Another murmured, "And tried to erase his sister." Helena stood frozen. You did this?" Charles tried to speak, but his voice was gone. Ava wasn't finished. Not yet. Charles was handcuffed in front of the very guests who had mocked Ava hours before. His white tuxedo was stained with sweat and shame. Reporters swarmed, flashes blinking like lightning. Helena collapsed onto a nearby chair, tears streaming silently. She no longer had the power to save him. Ava stood tall, calm as dawn breaking over a stormy night. Her voice was steady. "This isn't about revenge," she said quietly. "It's about justice for every person who has been silenced, ignored, or trampled on because of their skin or their station." Weeks later, Ava sat behind the desk once reserved for Charles Whitmore. The office was different now, brighter, filled with photos of employees promoted from janitors to managers, scholarships for children of workers, and community programs supporting Black entrepreneurs. Amanda, a former cleaner, now Ava's executive assistant, smiled. "Forbes wants to feature the company's turnaround story." Ava nodded. "Good, but I don't want fame. I want change." At home, Ava helped two young girls with their homework, girls she had adopted from a local shelter. They looked up to her not just as a guardian, but as a symbol of hope. She thought of her mother, Isabella, and the family she reclaimed. Henry Whitmore would be proud. Because Ava's victory wasn't just dethroning a corrupt man. It was proving that true power comes from dignity, courage, and the will to rewrite your story, even when the odds are stacked against you. The richest inheritance is not money. It's respect. And Ava had earned it, with every step she took that night on the marble stairs.